I'm Gary Parr, and you are listening to Fiber Talk, the twice weekly podcast for needlework artists. Our artists this week, we're heading to the shops this week, and Melissa MacLeod from The Wool and the Floss. Hi, Melissa.
Hi there. How are you?
Doing all right. It's been ages. You were number 30, show number 30 in August 2017.
And what show is this? Do you have an idea?
This is show 210 with guests and 420 or 30 total. Yeah. So.
Wow. Well, thank you for having me again. I'm very, very much looking forward to it and appreciate it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And then also with us from the Needlepoint Clubhouse in St. Louis area, Megan Holmes. Megan, welcome.
Well, hi there. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Now, Melissa, this is the second time that we've done a show with someone else, so we got to do one just with you.
I keep being a bridesmaid, never the bride, maybe? I don't know.
I don't know what that deal is. Yeah, because the first time we did it with Kim Young of Sassy Jacks, and
yes.
That was fun because you were both kind of getting going, so we got to talk about getting shops going, and one day we're going to just Melissa. I think that's what we'll do. Yeah.
Well, that's okay. It's always fun to talk with. The more the merrier is what Megan and I always say anyway. So
you got it.
It seems like it's been a long 3 years and a very short 3 years too. So yeah. It's interesting times.
Now, is your shop, are you still have the knitting aspect too, or has that?
We still are knitting and needlepoint, a little bit of crochet, we've got like a few little embroidery things, some punch needle things, like we have a little bit of things. Currently, needlepoint is absolutely having a moment. Knitting, I think because it's so much more tactile, like it's so much of our business now is turned to remote sales. I ship probably 80% of my business these days, I would say. So if you can't feel and touch and smell yarn people really love to smell yarn, which I think is really funny. I'm a newer knitter, so you can tell the old time knitters because they literally come in and smell the yarn. It cracks me up. So our knitting is still very much here, but because it's really just appealing to our local walk-in customers, and that's a smaller percentage of my business these days, therefore it's not quite as busy as the needlepoint side is, but it's definitely still here and will keep being here for many, many years to come, I hope.
Yeah, let's see, that's most interesting because, needlework across the board has just gone gangbusters, and I just had assumed that knitting was in the same boat, but not so much. That's interesting. Yeah,
and I think there's also a lot of dyers now out that don't work with shops, so perhaps like that's also affecting where people are ordering from. I'm not really sure. It's something I question every day. Like, why isn't this gone as crazy? And my local knitters tell me it's because if you can't see it, feel it, touch it, you don't want to pick it. So
okay.
Yeah, we do an in-shop video every Friday about needlepoint that I do. And then every Tuesday, my yarn manager kind of does an equivalent kind of thing. And she's got a lot of people that watch, but it's just, I don't know. It's just not quite taken off as much for whatever reason.
That's interesting.
And we don't have to worry about smelling anything in our shop because we do not carry yarn.
Yes. The needle pointers do not smell the threads. It's a very much a knitting phenomenon.
That's something new I've never heard you say, so I'm sitting on that. Sorry.
And now, Megan, I ran into the needlepoint. Our daughter and her family live in St. Louis area. And I ran into the Needlepoint Clubhouse, and I think I have this right, when it was over near Creve Coeur.
You got it. So it was actually at what we call Olive and Vallis, right off of
yes.
the 260. Mm-hmm. And I bought the shop when it was there, and the lease was due to end about 6 months after I bought the shop, and we made the decision to move, and it was risky. I don't know if anybody listening has ever owned a business or bought an existing business, but the one thing they say is just don't move your location, because new owner and new location is just trouble. But it has been absolutely fabulous for us. We are on Manchester Road, which is a long road here in St. Louis, and the frontage is great advertising. It's a great spot, and we're really pretty centrally located in the St. Louis area. So it has worked out extraordinarily well for us.
Okay, well, good for you, because when we visit our daughter and stay in a hotel, we stay over in that area, and then we often will have breakfast at the Morning Watch, I believe it is, restaurant, and then the shop was right across the street.
So First Watch
First
is
Watch,
on Falmouth.
there it is.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yep. And well, but Gary, there's also a First Watch in Kirkwood, so you can be nearby me the next time as well. So
okay, all right. So it's like a package deal then. Okay.
You got it. It's about, I don't know, 2 miles away. But there's also a fabulous French bakery across the street from us called Nathaniel Reed, which is very, very well known in the region. And so the lines are out the door, which does not hurt us for business as well. So anyway,
okay,
I guess we like to follow the breakfast joints.
Well, that can work, because the last time that we went to breakfast, you had already moved. Not the last time, but the last time that I tried to go to the shop and it was empty. And because I said to Margaret, she was going to sit in the car. I said, I'm going to go over to the shop and see what's there. And there was nothing. So, okay. All right. But as long as there's breakfast food, and then we can go get Needlepoint stuff, that's good.
We can deal with that. And I'll tell you that not only do we have what I would consider a better marketing platform just visually from our location, but we also tripled the size of the footprint. And so we have way more space and have been able to spread out and add some lines. And so it's been nothing but fabulous, I have to say.
Well, that's great. Well, when I went to the previous owner's shop, it was, as I recall it, just strictly painted canvas and threads. And have you kept that under your ownership? Have you pretty much kept that, or have you expanded and added some things?
So I'll tell you that I would say for the most part, yes, I've maintained the painted canvas offerings and kept the what I think our shop is known for is the thread offerings. We have a pretty large selection of threads. But I have dabbled a little bit in the cross stitch, and that's because there really is no other cross stitch brick and mortar here in St. Louis.
There is no cross stitch.
Well, yeah, and there's a couple. There's a woman who was dyeing, and dyeing fabrics and threads, and I'm not sure if she is still. I wish I knew. The pandemic has taken my brain over, but so she was not too far away, but. We added the Weeks Dye Works line, and we are carrying Fiber on a Whim, which is I'm not sure if you've talked with those gals before, but they dye linens and Aidas, and so we're doing that. We're trying to keep it a little more fibers, fabrics, but we haven't gotten into patterns. That just seems kind of like a rabbit hole that I'm not real comfortable with as far as the space in the store. But yeah, every day I toy around adding more. It's really that's not my forte, and so it concerns me a bit to add something that I'm not particularly comfortable with. But we do have, like I said, the thread lines that are transferable to all hand needle crafts, and so
right.
Yeah. So there's still a chance, Gary. There's still a chance.
Okay.
I haven't closed that door yet, but yeah.
Yeah, all right.
I'll tell you, and what Melissa alluded to is that Needlepoint is having a moment for us as far as the pandemic is concerned. And so even thinking about adding another arm to the business right now just feels a little daunting. So
yeah. Well, see, my first love is Needlepoint. And but I tend to be a charted canvas person more than painted canvas.
I'm sorry. So you know what? We do sell canvas by the yard. I know Melissa does too. We also carry a pretty extensive line of the Kathy Reese charted patterns, and we do have a few other charted patterns. So yes, we do have some. I wouldn't say that it's as extensive as our painted line, but we certainly do carry some of those of the charts and the threads. that go with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, your growth also in the painted canvas also strong, and are we adding new people? Are we finding young people who want to do painted canvas?
Yes, absolutely, and that's been just like such a great like boon. The total silver lining to this pandemic is that so many young people were, like the rest of us, no matter what our age, stuck at home and realizing that pecking around on their phone for hours on end was just producing more anxiety. And so many people in their 20s and 30s have really realized, like, I could be doing something else and I could have something to show for it in the end. And they've realized how comforting it is. I'm sure we'll touch base about this, but Megan and I have come together because we do this podcast together that is solely, practically 100% focused on painted designs. And I chatted with a gal yesterday who's a lifestyle blog writer that focuses on the millennials, and she has like 45,000 followers or something. And she is all about needlepoint now. And she has been bringing so much attention to it with that age group that I told her, I feel like when a young person comes into my shop and says, I want to start needlepointing, I'm like, it's like in the old days. I said, I don't even know if they do this anymore because I haven't really been to a bar in so long. But in the old days, they used to ring the bell when they got a good tip. Like, that's how the shop owners feel. Like, we want to ring that bell. Like, we're so excited when somebody new comes in and like comes into the fold, and we're like, oh, this is gonna live on. And so not only I think with the pandemic have we had a lot of young people with engaged interest. We've had a ton of people that are bringing in these projects from, 20 and 30 years ago that were stuck in their closet. And they're like, you know what, now's the time. And they've gotten started and they've just kept on stitching. So it's been really, really great. And I think a lot of people have found a really nice social media community where, you're at home and you feel kind of isolated at times, but there's such a great online community of, I think, all needle artists, but our experience is more in the needlepoint world, that people have found a lot of comfort and connections in a time where those things are kind of hard to come by.
Yeah. What is it that the younger people are looking for in terms of designs? It certainly isn't baskets of flowers. What types of designs do they tend to like?
I don't know if that's untrue though, Gary.
Okay.
I think that a lot of this is coming back. Melissa, don't you agree? The flowers, the bows, a lot of that very traditional needlepoint is very is strong.
Yeah, the new term grand millennial is quite popular, and that's exactly what you're saying, Megan. They're like going back to what their grandmothers used to love. But there's also a lot of like cheeky sayings on things and objects, like, and to be honest, sometimes I don't totally understand it, like how people want to stitch a bottle of ketchup. I'm not sure it really makes sense to me, but you know what? They're stitching and they're finding joy in it, and that's what it's all about, So I do think that the interest, given your age, is definitely can be different. I think there's also a lot of draw to simpler, obviously, things because they're newer stitchers. They don't want to get into something that's going to overwhelm them. So it might be something, and maybe that's why the bottle of ketchup is interesting, because it has white, black, and red. And you've got to start somewhere, right? Like, we all didn't start out with a project that has 50 colors, because then you'd probably run away screaming and never do it again. So the simplistic designs is a really nice place to start.
Yeah.
And I also think that they're starting with the larger mesh count. And so they're looking for the 13, 14 mesh count versus the 18, just to get their chops and to be able to read the canvas. And, it's obviously easier to see. And so I think that's where I'm seeing a lot of the growth with the younger stitchers, is the larger mesh count, regardless of the size of the pattern as well.
And I think that that's not even necessarily because of the eyesight, because keep in mind, that's us, not them. I think it's a little bit more like you can see your progress quickly, and you can feel like you've accomplished something. and I've got kids all, in their 20s. And I think, this is not a criticism at all. I think it's just an observance. It's a generation that wants to see things happen quickly. They've spent their whole lives on technology where things move at the speed of light. And so they want to see things kind of happen more quickly. And so the 13 mesh canvas accomplishes that.
The instant gratification generation, right?
Yes,
right.
Yes.
So I've not heard this term grand millennials. So there's a growing appreciation among the young folks for the older things, the things of the past.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you search the hashtag Grand Millennial on Instagram, and you'll be like surprised, amazed, overjoyed, and shocked, maybe all of those things at the same time.
Interesting.
I had a meeting with my pillow finisher last night, and I think we had 30.
No, let's just take that. Let's just take that statement and just sit on that for a second. I had a meeting with my pillow finisher. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Gary, I'm not here to say that my life is exciting.
Although that might be the most exciting thing you did this week. You never know.
It's the truth. But my point is that we had, I think out of the 30, I think there were 4 pillows that wanted inset with a ruffle. And he said, what on earth is going on? What is this inset with a ruffle? Am I back in the 80s? And it's all that grand millennial resurgence. It's I want my pillows to look like what my grandma had on her guest bed. So.
Because see, it's interesting because often you hear needlepoint, but not like grandma did. And so now now we're getting the other thing. Okay.
I think it's coming back. Yep.
Okay.
I see a lot of like chintz and gingham and things that, especially the chintz, really amazes me when you look at some of like the interior design things that are going on too. I think you're seeing that movement a little bit there as well.
The blue and white, the caning, the bamboo, it's a lot of that is in the current styles for sure.
But they still don't want the silver. They don't want to have to polish that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take grandma silver. I'll take it.
No, I mean, there's a lot of truth there. We're in the process of moving, and a lot of stuff that normally would be kept and passed on, we're getting rid of because our kids don't want it. They don't want to deal with it, and it just gets thrown away or passed on.
What's wrong, Gary? You didn't raise grand millennials. I would think with your background that you would for sure be raising grand millennials in the needlework, but
no.
evidently no.
Ours are in their 30s and 40s. No, it's too, they're past that. Yeah. No interest. They think I'm nuts. So, yeah.
But on the flip side, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go. That's all right.
Well, I was going to say, without sounding crass, I mean, grandma is still stitching too, right? So we've got these veteran stitchers who are still also very voraciously stitching and buying, and that's the generation that was very isolated in the last year. And I mean, the amount of Christmas ornaments and pieces that we are seeing finished now because that older generation was so isolated is just absolutely overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the group that has the time and in 90% of the instances has the funds because they aren't feeding kids to do that kind of thing. And yeah, I've thought often in this pandemic, if we did not have social media, what would happen to our veteran stitchers? But so many of them have found a much greater community through social media. Once they get over the technology hump, that I think it has rejuvenated an awful lot of them and expanded their horizons in terms of what can be done and how it can be done. And the young people had that knocked, but us older folks have, I think, really benefited from that.
For sure, but in turnabout, the younger people have as well, because they might have the technology down, but they're going on these Facebook groups and getting answers to questions they have with the, much older person than they are, the 20-year-old and the 80-year-old are becoming buddies on social media and each helping each other out in different ways. I think it's really just a lovely thing to see. As I said, it's a really great community and everyone helps each other out. Someone's out of a dye lot, 50 people are digging into their stash and it's really great. And I think the newer stitchers are really, because they can't go to classes at shops right now, for the most part. I think things are starting to open up some places, but for the most part, they haven't been able to go to classes since they've started stitching. So they've had to learn with YouTube videos and with input from friends of all ages on these social media, Facebook groups.
Yeah. The learning and sharing is pretty neat across the board, no question. Yeah. So what are you guys seeing what trends are you seeing in terms of more advanced painted canvas stitchers? Are there designs that are standing out to you? Are they getting away from stitch guides and starting to do more on their own? What are you seeing with the more talented, more experienced people?
I think. You want to go, Megan? You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think that for a lot of the longtime stitchers that have, they're done with their chapter of their working life, perhaps, and they have a little more time on their hands. They had gotten into a phase of going to classes with national teachers and traveling to shops, sometimes in their hometown, sometimes a couple hours away, sometimes across the country. And that's obviously not been a choice in the last year. So what I have seen is that group of stitchers, now that they don't have access to going to these national classes where they can learn all these new techniques, they're wanting to purchase stitch guides from the very creme de la creme of the needlepoint teachers and basically enable themselves to learn from those stitch guides. So like Mary Legalay of Whimsical Stitches, she's got pages and pages of stitch guides and stitch concepts that she has written. And I think people are looking, like I have people regularly ask me, can you get me any of these canvases that Mary has a stitch guide for? Or can you get me any of these canvases that Patricia Stone has a stitch guide for? So I think they are using those things as learning opportunities. But I also think maybe a little bit down the food chain, if I dare use those words, the more intermediate stitcher who used to always come to classes. I had a number of people at my shop that were my students, and they said at the beginning, they're like, we can't do this without you. And I kept encouraging them, saying, you know what I do is not rocket science. Like I didn't have to go to medical school for 8 years to figure this out. So I'm like, buy yourself a book. It's a little bit of trial and error, and you can pick your own stitches and you're going to do a great job. And I think they haven't surprised me at all. They've surprised themselves by being able to accomplish that task. And it's been really fun to see them spread their wings without me and know that they can create beautiful things without the needlepoint teacher, quote unquote, holding their hand. So
the stitch guides, then it sounds like the use of those is shifting away from a crutch and just give me a set of instructions and I'll execute it, to here's a starting point and then branch off from there.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I don't know. That sounds fairly accurate. What do you think, Melissa?
I think so, although I do also know, like I'm talking now about myself as a personal stitcher. I love a stitch guide. If I'm going to sit down at night at 9 o'clock at night and want to stitch, and sometimes that'll just be basket weave, and I'm all about basket weave stitching. There is no one ever should apologize for that. And I have people that say that to me all the time. So that's why I'm phrasing it that way. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of just basket weave, but I also like to do more interesting stitches. But sometimes I don't want to have to think that hard. So I appreciate being spoon fed, even though I'm very capable of figuring it out on my own. I mean, I'm a stitch guide writer, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy the comfort of someone guiding me along in the process. Because sometimes you just don't want to think that hard. You just want to sit down and create and not have to spend time worrying about what the best stitch is in the best place. And that's what those stitch guides have done for you. They've auditioned all the stitches for you, and they've made all the mistakes so that you don't have to.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I'm more of I like a stitch guide. I like suggestions for sure. I am more of an explorer of different types of threads. And it always amazes me, speaking of the veteran stitchers, they come in and they say, well, I've used wool my whole life. And I look at them and I say, oh, but the world is just about to open up to you, because we have metallics, we have silks, we have blends, we have overdyes, to me, that's where the fun is looking at a thread and an area and figuring out, what you can do to make the thread and the area sing, not only from, just the stitch guide and the color, but the type of thread that you're going to use. So.
Yeah, well, that's, I don't do painted canvas, but when I see painted canvas done by people who really know what they're doing, and the way they just literally bring those things to life with dimension and color and texture, it stops me every time, because I don't think that there's a technique in needlework that can match that when it's done at the at the optimum level. It's just stunning every time.
Even in the counted pieces, though, using different textures and the colors and metallic here and there, or metallic on purpose, layered with something else. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a different level. I mean, you could argue that that kind of dimension happens with stump work and gold work, and it does. But to take a painted design on a flat canvas and through threads and stitches, make it a three-dimensional dynamic visual thing is when it's done right, it's really impressive. And you can sit down and really appreciate that whoever did that. There's a lot of work, a lot of hours behind that just to get to that level. And it stops me every time. It's always impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you, the threads thing, I mean, that's when I started doing needlepoint on painted canvas with wool. 13 count.
You and everybody else, Gary.
Yeah. 13 count and basket weave. And sorry, Melissa, but ugh.
Well, it's very relaxing. I know that you for a while had your meditative stitch hour.
Yes.
There you go.
Yep.
I mean, that's what that's all about. Like, sometimes you just want to push and pull that needle and not have to think, and that's where basket weave comes into place. So
yeah,
it is not my first choice, but there are times when it absolutely is my first choice.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, guys, it's always my first choice. I love a good basket weave, and I think maybe it's my phase in life, or I also have a real appreciation for nostalgia and the basics. And that was the basic tapestry work was done in either Victorian cross stitch or the basket weave, and I think there's really something special about the kind of basic level of the craft, and also as you said, the meditative part of it really is helpful to me. So
well, there's no
come on,
doubt.
let's not be basket weave haters. Come on guys.
Well, I respect it, because someone who does basket weave well that's impressive. Someone told me once you should do, if you want to get good at it, you should do basket weave every day. But yeah, to do it right and have a field of thread that is just smooth and perfect is not easy. But no thanks.
And some of the really, as Melissa noted, some of the national amazing teachers will say that you should have a bit of basket weave on every canvas you do to rest your eye.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because otherwise it just all gets too crazy. You need a place of calm so that the other pieces can shine. For sure.
The massive amounts of threads that we have, and just every time I think, all right, we've seen all the threads we're going to get, then we get more.
That's right.
Rainbow Gallery comes out with another line of something nobody ever thought of. Does it get? I mean, as shop owners, that's got to be really tough to keep up, and not just the inventory of every color, but there's just so many lines anymore that just sheer retail space is an issue. How do you choose? How do you control that?
You heard me laugh because Megan has this large, glorious, beautiful shop. I have this very charming, quaint, small shop in comparison. And so every decision I make is so carefully thought out because I cannot sacrifice an inch of space. Like every thread has to be a thread that is well loved by whatever group of people it is. Like not all people are going to love all threads, but I can't afford to have anything sit here taking up space if there's not a lot of cheerleaders for that particular option. So Megan has a little bit more leeway, I guess, in terms of,
well, I've got
things.
some leeway. I mean, frankly, yes, I have a little more square footage, and I do have some leeway when it comes to real estate. But we're also running a business, and so first of all, self-control is part of what, as you just alluded to. How do you choose? I mean, self-control. We want all the new stuff and we want all the new things, but we're running a business, and the last thing I want to do is bring in a new line that's just solely going to cannibalize another line I already carry.
Right.
And unless it's, unless for some reason it's wholly better, Pattern Ann gets a bad rap because it was, it's rough on the fingers, whatever. So there are, yes, there are wools out there that I would argue are easier to use. They're softer. They're different, but I'm not just going to bring in every line of wool or a brand new line of wool just to do it, just because I have the space to do it, because then I'm going to cut out, sales in the other categories. So yeah, I think it has to do with being a smart business person. This is not a hobby. I don't do this just as a hobby, and I know Melissa doesn't either. I mean, we do it to, also make some money. And so we have to think about it from a business perspective as well. So.
Yeah. So you don't want to compete. I always say I don't want to compete with myself. And the other thing to just throw out there that I don't think people realize, I brought in the Planet Earth silk line during the pandemic, and I'm so thankful I did, because that company has been run amazingly well, and we're able to get practically instantaneous product. But bringing in that line, I think was a $4,000 decision. So, you don't make those decisions lightly, because you're taking up a lot of space and you're taking up inventory dollar. And so you've got to be careful of that. And I guess for me too, certain lines, I don't have the luxury of having every color. And so that's also a little picking and choosing, what colors do we think we see in canvases this year? We can probably live without those kind of shades because those shades aren't in style right now. And so that's always evolving.
I also think that there are regional business decisions to be made. Melissa and I are lucky to be part of a group of people who own shops, and there's a constant discussion about thread lines. And there was a particular conversation about adding a thread line, and one person made the comment, well, over here this is what everybody uses, your customer, we're big belt people here in St. Louis. We have to have the wools for the backgrounds of the belts. We've got so I think you also make these decisions based on where you are and what your customers want. So, I mean, it's not unlike any other business. I think people think there's this kind of special magic around owning a needlepoint shop. It's really using a lot of business basics.
Well, that's the thing that a well-run needlepoint shop or needlework shop in general that impresses me is, to me, it always strikes me as self-control, because the natural stitcher thing is I want all the toys, and and as a shop owner, to make those decisions and stick to them. And then even if you get a rush on something that you have to special order, I'm sure you'd think, well, should I add this line? And then you have to just, stop yourself and control that. And then, of course, you're always out of the color that people want. I mean, I'm sure that happens all the time, no matter what you have in the shop. And it's the whole inventory thing. It fascinates me because it has to be something that is a constant struggle.
It is. And I think there's also for me too, back to the space issues, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm always walking around thinking, have we been selling a lot of that lately? Because I probably need to liquidate that if I haven't been selling it. It needs to go. And those, that's kind of dumping your child off at the curb. Like, you love them all and you don't want to get rid of any of them, but sometimes you just have to make those hard decisions. And that took me a little longer to come to initially. I didn't have the confidence to make those decisions. I inherited most of my thread lines that I had at first from my former owner. And so it took me maybe a year or a year and a half to walk around and just get out the axe and chop off the bad ones that weren't working. So,
well, and I'll be honest, I was a pretty, green, I would say in the industry, I was a rather green needle pointer when I bought my shop. And so I made a few decisions up front that I would not have made now. And I think a lot of that has to do with my personal preference. And I think it's easy to sell what you like, but not everybody's going to like what you like. So I have to be very careful. I'm pretty stubborn. And so I'll say, I'm not doing that, and it's like, well, but Megan, it would be a better choice if you did. And it's like, yeah, okay, you're right. It's, and so you have to carry things that kind of appeal to people, not just your own taste as well. So that's kind of an interesting piece of, and because after all, this is a hobby. And and as I'm talking to you, Gary, I'm thinking you said, we want all the bells and whistles. Then yeah, because it's a hobby, if you're a fisherman, you've got all the flies, and if you've got, and so, yeah, but it's also, you have to go back to, it is in fact a business. And I have to remind myself that a lot, so.
And what is it with belts in the St. Louis area? I've just never seen so many belts as I have in St. Louis. They must move. They must sell.
We sell belts like crazy. We finish belts like crazy. I don't know. And I'll be honest with you. You didn't ask, and maybe you don't care, but that's actually what brought me to, that's what brought me to Needlepoint. Was I moved to St. Louis and I saw these belts and I thought, this is pretty cool. What are these things that everyone's wearing? And so that's what interested me. And I have no idea why Needlepoint belts are so hot here in St. Louis, but we joke about, if you see somebody in an airport anywhere in the country and they have a Needlepoint belt on, the chances that they're from St. Louis are pretty high. So it's kind of crazy.
Based on all the shops I've been in all over the country, they have to be from St. Louis, because there's very little of that elsewhere. It's most interesting.
Isn't it funny? Yeah, it really is. And I wish I knew why, but I don't.
We have another good friend who's a shop owner in Chicago, and she had to call Megan and I both last year. And she's like, she's been in business. I think she started her shop about the same time we did. So she's been in business for 4 years. And she called us both, or texted us both, and said, I just got my first belt turned in. And we're both like, what? She's like, how do I get this finished? Yeah. So it was just kind of a hoot. And we don't sell belts the way Megan does, but we sell a decent number. And the funny thing is, as I've shopped in other Metro Detroit area shops, if you're on the west side of Detroit, no one buys a Needlepoint belt. But on the east side of Detroit, you buy Needlepoint belts.
Interesting.
Who knows?
Okay. I guess we're just far enough south, I guess. I think our friends in Lexington and Louisville do really well with belts as well. But anyway.
It's just an interesting thing, because that, boy, you go to St. Louis, there's belts of all makes and models. It's amazing.
You got it. I think my husband has 4 and I'm working on the 5th. So
okay. That's something. So now you guys started doing this video podcast thing. Was that a pandemic startup, or tell me about that?
Well, I'd like to back up a little bit and just throw in a little thing about how Megan and I got to know each other, because what people that have watched us have probably figured out is we have become very, very close friends. But we really never spent more than probably 20 days in the same place together, I would guess, something like that. Yeah, so we had met at, I first met her because my daughter was going to school in St. Louis. So all 3 of us have a St. Louis tie. So my daughter was in college at WashU. And so I met her at the shop before she owned it. But I think you were working there, maybe? And
yes, I think so.
Yeah, so then she ended up buying her store, and we ran into each other in Dallas and just kind of connected and said, oh, we should, do some things together. And Megan suggested we trade some canvases and do a summer trunk show together. And that was just kind of like our first kind of true interactions together. And then when the pandemic hit, as relatively newer shop owners, we'd both been at it 2 or 3 years at that point, and all you can think of is, holy moly, like I have basically my whole life savings into this business, and my governor just locked my front doors, and how am I ever going to survive this? So we had probably, a couple conversations that were pity parties, but for the most part, we really lifted each other up and were each other's cheerleaders, and really kind of coached each other along of like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And so I started doing some things online. She started doing some things online. They were a little bit different. I was started doing these unboxing parties, which basically was just a way to make me open up my product that was piling up at the front door that I was overwhelmed by. And that got to be, kind of a thing that people were really interested in on Friday mornings. And then Megan, and I'll let her talk about it, but she started doing something on Saturday nights. So yeah, why don't you talk about that, Megan?
Yeah, so I just had this, I don't know, I think I was just feeling low and feeling the same as Melissa, just, like all of us were, like, where are we at? What are we doing? And I thought, why don't we just start talking to some people and have conversations about Needlepoint? And so then I started interviewing designers, and it was on Instagram, and people were watching, and it was fun. And I think we kind of together realized that there was a community of people out there who were really very interested in sort of the backbone of the industry, and like the stuff that not everybody was talking about. Who are these people that are painting these canvases? Where is the thread coming from? How are people finishing things? Let's get some new ideas. Melissa shows her finishing on Fridays, and people go nuts for it. But we just kind of, I guess we sort of found this little place in the world where, Gary, you've done a wonderful job with the charted work but no one was really doing that on the needlepoint side. So oddly did it on a visual platform. I guess I don't really know why, other than we both kind of started this visual thing. And as you know, it's a very tactile, very visual business. And yeah, and it has kind of taken off, and it's grown some veins, and I hope grown some roots, and we're really having a good time with it, as you said you have been over the past 200 episodes. So we're behind you, but
we're definitely behind Gary for sure, but it's no race to the finish line for sure. But we end up transitioning from Instagram to YouTube. Right. And we've got to give my daughter some credit for that. These WashU graduates, I guess, learned a thing or two from that expensive tuition. And so she's like, you need to be on YouTube, because then, she gave us 30,000 reasons why. And so far it seems like she was right, because people can go back and, watch them far more likely than they'll backtrack on Instagram. And it was just a little bit more accessible to all people. And so yeah, we got to give my girl a little credit for that. So
yeah, if you're planning to do ongoing video things on Instagram, don't don't. It's not going to work. Yep. No.
It's a nice place for community, but it's not really the best spot to maintain any library of things, as I'm sure you know. No, it's not. It's quick hit stuff, but that's what it's set up to be, is that. So it functions well for that. Yeah. So Megan, you've got young kids and a shop to run. Do you get to stitch much? You're not the only one person who has asked me that even today. I do. Like we've been talking about, and, I really use needlepoint as a way to de-stress, a way to kind of like calm my brain down. And I've been doing that for years, even before I had kids and before I had a shop. And so I'm not quite as organized as Melissa. We joke a lot, but so she actually probably has her alarm set for the time that she's going to actually stitch during the day. I just try to force myself to find time. I love it so much. It's interesting because it is my hobby. It's also my business, and I do use it to decompress, but I also have to step away from it sometimes, so it is hard to find the time. But I usually stitch at night. I actually have a neighbor who stitches, and we stitch together, sitting outside, and Melissa and I do a lot of virtual buddy stitching on the weekends. But yeah, so I don't do nearly as much as I would like or should based on the size of my stash. But yeah, I do. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, you have a lot of company there. Don't worry about that. Yeah. A lot of company. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's I asked that question because people who have jobs in hobby worlds, and it doesn't matter what the hobby is, so many of them will tell you, I do it all day long in my shop or my business or whatever, and after dinner I have to get away from it. And and you get kind of a mixed bag in the needlework world where others, some people will say, yeah, in the evenings I stitch because it relaxes me, and then you'll have others who will say, no, I'm done. I've had enough for the day. And
I have to say, I'm so lucky because what I do all day is, well, a lot of it's the business side, but I'm also working with people and talking to people, and I have to say, suggesting threads, suggesting stitches, looking at canvases actually excites me to get to my work even more. It doesn't stress me out or, make me feel like I'm overwhelmed by it. It actually gives me this great sense of excitement. So that's fun. But you're right. I think that you're right. There are two different kind of sides to the coin. And I'm definitely, I do like to immerse myself in the craft at night to relax. So, and I think Melissa, you're the same way, aren't you? Wouldn't you say?
I am. I think, I've been on both sides of that though. In my, I almost feel like I've had two careers in this world of ours.
Yeah.
The pre-pandemic and the post-pandemic. So in my pre-pandemic life, I spent a lot of time teaching during the day, and writing stitch guides, and sometimes occasionally at the shop, but more likely at home, stitching shop samples. And, working up for long-term classes and those kind of things. So then I wasn't as likely to want to stitch personally for my personal well-being and my personal projects. Now, because I never get to, I don't teach classes anymore. I'm not really writing stitch guides for the most part. I am some, but it's just different now. Most of the time while I'm at work, I'm paying bills, I'm ordering inventory, I'm checking in inventory, I'm talking to people. And so even though I'm in a needlepoint shop, I really don't feel like I'm knee deep in the needlepoint in a lot of ways. So I can't wait to get home and actually have that opportunity to get my head really into the stitching game.
Okay. Yeah, there's a separation there. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. The other thing that I wonder about as shop owners, I mean, this pandemic will subside someday, and of course, but what I'm hearing about Michigan, it's going to be a little longer than the rest of us. But you guys got a mess there. But
no one can figure out why either, Gary. I honestly, like, my kids have lived in different places. They're like, no one wears a mask here. I mean, Michiganders have really been responsible in so many ways. No one who lives here can figure out like why it's so bad, but we don't need to discuss it anymore. It's just mind-blowing to me.
But the pandemic has imposed change on the business world in general. I mean, there's a massive change in industry, manufacturing, all over the place, remote workers, and it certainly has affected how needlework shops do their business.
Absolutely.
What things do you think that will continue on after it subsides and people are coming in the doors? Are there things that you've put in place that you definitely are going to hang on to, and are there things that you're just going to let fade into the woodwork because people are coming in the stores?
Well, I know for my sake, as I talked about earlier, I kind of started doing my Friday morning unboxing parties that I call them, which are 9:30 in the mornings on Friday morning. And I have women in California who get up early to watch this. I have a group of stitchers in Arkansas that get together in someone's backyard and put it on a big screen. I mean, it is the most flattering, fun, surprising thing that has happened. And my finisher, my finishing manager, has commented, because we're getting in so much finishing, she's like, "You have to stop this." I'm like, tell her, these people would lynch me if I stopped at this point. And it's really not that big of a deal. But I think right now, because people are so isolated, that it's a feeling they're able to feel like they're connected, and they're not going to their local stores, or maybe they're people that stitch and don't have a local store, because there's lots and lots of those. So they get to feel like they're in a shop, because we go through our finishing. I talk about the trunk shows. I show off new product, and they feel like, they're here with me. And I don't think I think that will always be a part of my business model. I would be shocked if that goes away. And I would love to say I was like so smart and planned it all out, but it was very much a happy accident. It was absolutely a happy accident that has grown my business exponentially. And I love doing it. I absolutely love doing it. And I think people, when they see me doing it, they know that my joy is genuine. So that's super fun. And to the point we've had to kind of reorganize the floor space in my shop. Our old office that my old owner used was like this little teeny tiny place. Now I've taken over a lot of my retail floor space to create a much larger office, because our shipping, many days we ship 30 to 40 packages a day. Mm-hmm. And prior to the pandemic, I probably shipped 30 packages a month. So that focus on the remote customer while still serving my local customers will always, I'm sure, be a part of my business model.
Yeah, I can't think of anything really that I would that will go away. What I do think that Melissa and I are both looking forward to and are very hopeful about is actually physically connecting with some of these people that we've talked to. I know their Instagram name, but I have no idea what their real name is or what their face looks like. So we're really looking forward to trying to consider ways that we can get groups of people together, whether it's retreats or whether it's I don't know what, but we're really kind of, I think if nothing else, we're really hoping to kind of climb on the shoulders of this whole thing and just keep climbing, not falling backwards.
Right.
And I think some things will naturally change. I hope that the industry doesn't calm down, but I think that it will naturally a bit. But we have ideas of ways that we want to keep working toward making this a fun, exciting community. So.
And I think I speak for both of us when I say, like, we both went into this as being like sole proprietors and business owners. Mm-hmm. But I think in many ways we feel like we now have a partner, because whenever one of us has a quote unquote crisis, which the good news is in the needlepoint world, a crisis is never truly a crisis. But when something stressful happens, we have each other to call on and say, how should I handle this? What could I do? How could I have done this better? And mm-hmm. We're both so fortunate, because I don't think most people that own a business by themselves have someone they can count on like that. So that's been a true silver lining of the last year, for sure.
Totally agree.
Most interesting. Ladies, thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation. Yes.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Now
I got to get to Megan's shop in Kirkwood and get. We must have the croissants over across the street then, so I'll get that.
Gary, you tell me when you're coming, and I'll get you a croissant just to get you into the shop. Okay.
Okay. All right. Counting on that. All right. Thanks so much, and thanks to everybody for listening.